Welcome to this episode of the Harpreet Singh Show. I'm your host Harpreet Singh from Surrey, British Columbia, Canada. In today's program, we'll be talking to a well-known director who has produced a film which is talking about the realities in what is happening in China. He has directed a film called Unsilenced, and today my guest will be Leon Lee, who will be telling us as to what is the reality and what is this bill based on. So let's get over to Vancouver and continue with our discussion with Leon Lee. Leon, good evening. How are you? Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So Leon, a little bit about yourself. You are a director for films. How did your interest develop in directing films, and since when you have been directing films?
I've started making films in 2006. I mostly did documentaries. I also did animation and narrative films. Unsilenced is a narrative film, but it's based on real life events.
Okay. So how did you get the idea about this film, and how much time did it take for you from a documentary filmmaker to a film which is based on true events?
I got an opportunity to meet Mr. Wang Weiyu, and he had spent 8.5 years in a Chinese prison. So he sat down with me and shared his story. I was profoundly moved. And right then I decided to make a film about him. It took us several years to write the script, to prepare for the production, to shoot the film, and finally finish it.
So what was that, what he told you, which inspired you to come forward and start working on this film? Like, he was in prison for 8 years, as you said, but what was so moving that moved you and you decided that, yes, I need to make a film and bring the truth before the people?
Wang was a star student, a PhD candidate in the prestigious Tsinghua University in Beijing, which was considered China's MIT. So he had a bright future. He was also tapped by the party to become, part of the leadership if he wishes. But he was also a practitioner of Falun Gong, which was sort of a Buddhist-based spiritual practice that was really popular in China. But in 1999, the regime suddenly banned Falun Gong, and Wang became a victim. He had a choice to make, whether he would give up his principles and his spiritual practice to do what the party wanted him to do, or he would stand up and speak the truth. He chose the latter and suffered as a result.
So that story of his was inspiring to you and you thought of started making this film. Which year was this, and how many years did it take you to first write the story and then, of course, bring this film on theater screens?
I think we met in 2018, and then took about 2 years for us to develop the script. I think we wrote at least dozens of drafts, and then finally we decided to pull the trigger and actually make the film. Obviously, we couldn't go back to China to shoot this film.
Right.
So the film was partly filmed in Vancouver and partly filmed in Taiwan.
So Leon, when you talked about Falun Gong, can you tell us why is the Chinese government against this movement?
Absolutely. Falun Gong is, as I mentioned before, Buddhist-based spiritual practice. It consists of some gentle exercises, a meditation, and also it centers on the tenets of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. Since it was introduced to the public in 1992, the government actually welcomed Falun Gong and also supported it. But by 1999, the government realized that there were more than 70 million to 100 million people in China practicing Falun Gong, which outnumbered the membership of the Communist Party in China, which somehow made them, worried. But now looking back, we know that's really not the real reason. The real reason is that Falun Gong believes in truth, compassion, and tolerance, but the communist regime unfortunately survives based on propaganda and violence.
Mm-hmm.
So if a large population in China would insist on speaking the truth, this is not what the party wants. That's why they launched a crackdown, a brutal crackdown, I might add, and that persecution until continued to this day.
Mm-hmm. So basically, as you said, from 92 to 99, the government was good enough with what was happening. But once they felt threatened, that was the time when they started taking action against the Falun Gong supporters. So from 1999 onwards, this film is based on what have you tried to project in this? What is the story of this film?
The story centers on Wang, his friends, and a Western reporter who was kicked out of China for reporting truthfully in 1989 during the Tiananmen massacre. And now all of them are involved in, after the government announced the crackdown against Falun Gong, and they have to work together to counter the government's propaganda and fight for their freedom.
Mm-hmm. So how long is this film? And again, as you said, it was basically you filmed in Vancouver and Taiwan because you couldn't go back to China. So is this film having, all what is happening? You have taken some images from what happened in China to Falun Gong supporters and showed that, or is it just all the story of Mr. Wong?
It's a narrative story, so it is a fictional film. It's not a documentary, but many of the scenes are based on real life events.
Right.
In particular, Wang's storyline, how he and his friends had to come up with creative ways to counter the government's propaganda. Because as many of you know, there is no independent media in China.
Right.
Thousands of newspapers, hundreds of TV stations, the entire internet space, they're all tightly controlled by the government. So imagine how to let people hear your voice under these circumstances. So they print leaflets, they distribute them by hand, they use balloons. They came up with very interesting ways to disseminate information. And for the Western reporter storyline, he also had to really find a way to try to get the information out, because as many Western reporters who stationed in China, they realized that they were under close surveillance, and if they would do something that made the party unhappy, maybe they won't get their visa renewed the next time. And also, even his editor back in the States, he did not want him to go ahead and report truthfully. So everybody has a decision to make. That's what makes this thriller so engaging and interesting to watch.
And again, as you said, you have told us a little bit about the story, but of course, it would be great. We are just talking about the trailer, what you are trying to present, but the entire film can be seen on the theater screens from February 25th onwards. But as you said, Leon, there are, about Falun Gong, there's a lot of information now spreading in the Western world. So what is something unique about this film which you as a director feel will really make the people feel and see the exact reality, what is happening in China?
Well, this film also, Wang is a Falun Gong practitioner, so he touches on Falun Gong. But the film itself really is about some students and the Western reporter, how, number one, they have to make a decision to really speak the truth. And number two, under heavy censorship in a totalitarian regime in China, how they risk everything to let their voices be heard. So in a way, I'm not sure if it adds anything on the persecution against Falun Gong, but it's certainly a very compelling story about truth versus lies, and which I think is more universal theme. But also, it's quite an inspiring story. The film had a release in the US last month, and many screenings ended with standing ovations. And we were happy to receive many feedback from audience members. They were telling us how inspired they were by Wang and his friends.
ਜੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸਮੈਨ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਪਿਆਰ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਕੀ ਵਜ੍ਹਾ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ? ਸੁਖੀ ਬਾਟ ਮੋਟਰਸ ਦੇ ਓਨਰ ਸੁਖੀ ਬਾਟ ਨੂੰ ਵੇਖ ਕੇ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਸਮਝ ਆ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਇੰਟੈਲੀਜੈਂਸ ਦਾ ਉਦਾਹਰਨ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕਾਰ ਸੈਗਮੈਂਟ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਖ ਸੁਖੀ ਬਾਟ ਮੋਟਰਸ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਏ ਨੇ ਸਰੀ ਦਾ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੈਂਟਰ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲੋੜ ਦੇ ਹਿਸਾਬ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਲੋੜੀਂਦੇ ਟਰੱਕਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਗਾਈਡੈਂਸ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਸਪੇਸ ਮੋਡੀਫਿਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਤੇ ਫਿਊਲ ਐਫੀਸ਼ੀਐਂਸੀ ਸਭ ਨੂੰ ਧਿਆਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸੁਖੀ ਬਾਟ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੈਂਟਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਟਰੱਕਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਹੈ ਟੌਰ।
है जुल्म ढाने का अंदाज भी कितना हंसी, हमारी जान पर बनाई है जब जब उसने अंगड़ाई ली। कभी खामोश रहते हैं, कभी शोर होता है। मोहब्बत में शरारत का मजा कुछ और होता है। दिल को जज्बात का तोहफा, खामोशियों को बात का तोहफा, खूबसूरती में जड़ी नजाकत अदाओं की चांद से मुखड़े को चांद सा तोहफा।
भारत ज्वेलर्स, सच्चे प्यार की चमक जैसा। पायल बिजनेस सेंटर सरी।
ਵੈਨਕਾਸਾ ਟਾਈਲ ਅਤੇ ਸਟੋਨ ਸ਼ੋਰੂਮ ਇੱਕ ਐਸੀ ਥਾਂ ਹੈ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਹੋਲਸੇਲ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਹਰ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੀਆਂ ਟਾਈਲਸ, ਸਟੋਨ, ਮਾਰਬਲ, ਬੈਕਸਪਲੈਸ਼, ਮੋਜ਼ੇਕ ਆਦਿ ਵਾਜਬ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਮਿਲ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਟਾਲੀਅਨ, ਸਪੈਨਿਸ਼, ਚਾਈਨੀਜ਼ ਪੋਰਸਲਨ ਜਾਂ ਸਿਰੈਮਿਕ ਟਾਈਲਸ ਜਾਂ ਮਾਰਬਲ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਆਰਡਰ ਤੇ ਜਾਂ ਕਲੀਅਰੈਂਸ ਤੇ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਮਾਲਕ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟ ਟਾਈਲਸ ਇੰਪੋਰਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ, ਜਿਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਕੁਆਲਿਟੀ ਦਾ ਸਮਾਨ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਦਾ ਸ਼ਿੰਗਾਰ ਬਣਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਵਿਜ਼ਿਟ ਕਰੋ 13042 84 ਐਵਨਿਊ ਸਰੀ। ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਹਿੰਦੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ 604 330 7363 604 330 7363
कर
Well, of course, the accolades you have got from the Western world, and especially in the States, a lot of top newspapers are praising the kind of work that has been done in this film. So in Canada now, it's being released on February the 25th, and where all can people go and see this film?
Well, if you go to unsilencedmovie.com, you will see a complete list of theaters. And in the Lower Mainland, we have the Landmark Cinema in Guildford, in Surrey. We have a Cineplex in International Village, and also Silver City in Riverport, Richmond.
Okay.
And by the way, I will be attending a in-person Q&A session on the evening show in Silver City, Riverport on Saturday, February 26th.
Wonderful. So Leon, you talked about speaking the truth. Now, what you have brought forward, how do you feel about it? Because while the Western world is praising this, but what is happening in China, and especially you being from China, what repercussions can this have on you or your crew?
Well, I think this is not my first film about human rights subject matters in China. And I was told many of my previous films were among the most pirated political films in China. So I was happy to learn that people in China were able to see the films and realize what's going on. Despite all the censorship, there are still many Chinese people who were able to circumvent the firewall and try to learn what's going on from the outside world. And we also, yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, we often receive feedback from viewers in China, actually. And they were telling us how the film changed their worldview and how they then made an effort to tell everybody they know on things they've learned from the film.
And Leon, are you yourself a Falun Gong practitioner?
I've read the books. I certainly identify with the philosophies, but I prefer remaining an independent filmmaker.
Right. As an independent filmmaker, when you make these kind of films which are portraying the truth happening in any country, there can be severe repercussions for that, as I told you before. So you're not concerned about it because you have made some films before also in the documentaries. But with this particular film, if you would like to share something which was very touching to you while you were directing this film, what would that be?
Well, in terms of the story itself, basically how, because I grew up in China, I understand firsthand what it means to go through my entire, education and being told essentially many lies. We were told no single student died in 1989 Tiananmen massacre. We were told many things, and now I had the opportunity to learn what's really going on. I felt it is my obligation to do something about it, to help educate my fellow Chinese citizens. Of course, there are risks. I certainly understand that. In my previous films, I had my fair share of encounter with the Chinese Ministry of State Security and other security personnel. But what I realized is I've interviewed many freedom fighters, many victims of persecution in China. If they can do what they did in China, there's no reason I should shy away while in Canada, because whatever risks I face is really nothing compared to the risks they face.
ਇੱਕ ਐਸੀ ਥਾਂ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਹਰ ਕੋਈ ਆਪਣੀ ਨਿੱਜੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਦੇ ਸੁਨਹਿਰੀ ਪਲ ਯਾਦ ਰੱਖਦਾ ਹੈ। ਉਹ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਉਹ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਭਰਿਆ ਜੀਵਨ ਬਤੀਤ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਪੂਰੀਆਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਜਦ ਕਿਸੇ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਨੂੰ ਸਜੇ ਹੋਏ ਘਰ 'ਚ ਬਦਲਿਆ ਜਾਵੇ। ਨਵੇਂ ਘਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਫਰੇਮਿੰਗ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਫਿਨਿਸ਼ਿੰਗ ਤੱਕ, ਡ੍ਰੇਪਰੀ, ਪੇਂਟਿੰਗਸ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਡੈਕੋਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਐਸੈਸਰੀਜ਼ ਤੱਕ, ਤੁਸੀਂ SK ਹੋਮ ਡਿਜ਼ਾਈਨਸ ਦੀਆਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਸਰਵਿਸਿਜ਼ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਸੁਪਨਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਹਕੀਕਤ 'ਚ ਬਦਲ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਕੰਟੈਕਟ ਕਰੋ ਸੰਦੀਪ ਕੌਰ 6048259295।
ਕੁਦਰਤ ਦੇ ਸੌਮਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਵਰਤੋਂ ਆਯੁਰਵੇਦਾ ਰਾਹੀਂ 5000 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਚੱਲਦੀ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਬਣਾਏ ਗਏ ਹੈਲਥ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਅਪਰੂਵਡ 100% ਸ਼ੁੱਧ ਆਯੁਰਵੈਦਿਕ ਡਾਇਟਰੀ ਸਪਲੀਮੈਂਟਸ ਦਾ ਲਾਭ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਸਟ੍ਰੈਸ, ਐਂਗਜ਼ਾਇਟੀ, ਇਨਸੋਮਨੀਆ, ਬਲੱਡ ਸ਼ੂਗਰ, ਕਿਡਨੀ, ਬਲੈਡਰ, ਹਾਜ਼ਮਾ, ਆਈਸਾਈਟ ਜਾਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੀ ਬਿਮਾਰੀ ਦਾ ਆਰਗੈਨਿਕ ਇਲਾਜ, ਜੋੜਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਦਰਦਾਂ ਤੇ ਸਰੀਰਕ ਮਸਾਜ ਲਈ ਕਈ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੇ ਆਯੁਰਵੈਦਿਕ ਤੇਲ ਵੀ ਉਪਲਬਧ ਹਨ। ਹੋਲਸੇਲ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਲਈ ਕਾਲ 604 628 2003।
ਹਰ ਰੰਗ ਹੈ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋ, ਹਰ ਮਾਡਲ, ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਦੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਵੱਖਰੀ ਪਹਿਚਾਣ। ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਹਾਂ, ਸਾਡਾ ਕਰਮ ਹੈ ਅੱਗੇ ਵਧਾਉਣਾ, ਸਫ਼ਰ ਨੂੰ ਸੌਖਾ ਬਣਾਉਣਾ। ਬਸੰਤ ਮੋਟਰਸ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕਰਕੇ।
So you have highlighted what is happening over there, and as you said before, the message of Falun Gong is compassion, truthfulness, and tolerance. So from this film also, towards the end, have you given some message also?
Well, for me, I feel my primary responsibility is to tell a compelling story. But the audience members will come back and have their own understanding and their own takeaways, right? But very importantly, I feel it's really the value of truth and how and the battle between lies and truth.
Right.
I'm sure many of us in our lives, we have the experiences when we know it's difficult to speak the truth.
Right.
But we know it's important. The truth is important to our lives and to our society.
Absolutely.
When it really matters, when it's really difficult to speak the truth, do we have the courage to do so? I hope this is an inspiring story and can, basically help us to make those kind of decisions.
Excellent. And what are your future plans now?
Well, we hope we will have a successful theatrical run in Canada. And then I am also working on a few other projects. For example, one of them is about how some Chinese overseas Chinese engineers were able to defeat the $1 billion Chinese Great Firewall through their own garage. This is also based on true stories. I'm also working on a project about Chinese human rights lawyers who were also persecuted by the regime for their sole crime of defending their clients.
And also, Leon, when you are so much, close to human rights and what is happening over there, what do you feel? Like you said, these movies or documentaries are pirated in China. A lot of people see this and it further encourages them to stand for truth, to stand for what is happening over there, what is not wrong. So how do you feel that especially movies have an influence on the people, and what do you feel, what can the public do about it, especially in the Western world?
I think if you read a story on a newspaper, certainly, you have an impression. But if you spend an hour and 30 minutes or 2 hours watching a good movie, then you really resonate with the story. It would have an enormous emotional impact on you, which compels you to do something. Quite often, I had people who have watched the film and writing to me, telling me they really want to take action, whether it's to spread the word among their family and friends, or contact their politicians. So cinema is really powerful in effecting change, and especially now, if we're outside of China looking for things inside China, maybe it seems to be opaque. You don't know really what's going on. But what I can tell you is there are lots of people, millions of people in China who are fighting for their rights. And although we rarely hear from them, but they're doing everything they can to also spread information and among their fellow Chinese citizens. So I am hopeful.
Right. And before I let you go, we'd like to see a trailer of this film, and then we'll conclude the program. So let's have a look at this trailer.
More than 10,000 Falun Gong practitioners protested peacefully in Beijing, China.
In what amounts to the largest demonstrations since the Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989.
岳阳，
早上好。
早。
快点！
法轮功教人向善，练的人不是越多越好吗？
如果人们都去信法轮功了，谁还信共产党呢？
就是这一家。
It is literally life and death for many party members to not let the story be told.
The government is conducting one of the largest scale propaganda campaigns in history. You just want to ignore it.
你怎么也相信啊？
好好把握。
What if you got arrested too?
你一个人能改变得了什么？
至少能不被改变。
You begged me to get you back there, whatever it took.
Why did you get into this business in the first place? People are being hurt. They're being killed. They're being jailed. If we don't act,
sometimes you have to compromise things you believe in to protect yourself.
岳阳，你没事吧？岳阳。
I cannot sit by and watch them be manipulated into turning against each other.
Get out of China. Expose their lies to the world.
Seems quite a thriller where, the story has been portrayed in a very nice manner. So has this film also been presented in some international film festivals, or it's just coming on the screens only?
We've won some awards actually in different festivals, including the Audience Award at the Austin Film Festival.
Okay.
Which is really nice. And as I said before, the film was really well received when released in 30 cities in the States. Now we're in Canada now, and hopefully the viewers will enjoy the film.
Right. Leon, thank you very much, and best wishes for your future endeavors and for this film also. And we hope you keep on spreading this message of love, humanity, and compassion. And the truth is uncovered wherever injustice is happening. As a filmmaker, what you're doing, we salute you for that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. Bye-bye. ਸੋ ਇਹ ਸਨ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਲਿਓਨ ਲੀ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟਰ ਨੇ ਅਨਸਾਈਲੈਂਸ ਫਿਲਮ ਦੇ। 25 ਫਰਵਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਫਿਲਮ ਜੋ ਹੈ ਰਿਲੀਜ਼ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, ਅਤੇ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਚਾਈਨਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਪਰਸੀਕਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਫੈਲਨ ਗੋਂਗ ਸਪੋਰਟਰਸ ਦੀ, ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਮੁੱਖ ਰੱਖ ਕੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਫਿਲਮ ਬਣਾਈ ਹੈ। ਅਤੇ ਇਹ ਫਿਲਮ ਜੋ ਹੈ 3 ਥਾਵਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਦੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ, ਸਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਰਿਚਮੰਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਅਤੇ unsilencedmovie.com 'ਤੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੀ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਇਸ ਫਿਲਮ ਬਾਰੇ ਵੀ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਅਤੇ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਲੀ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਮਕਸਦ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਹੈ ਰੈਪਰੀਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੇ ਨੇ, ਲੇਕਿਨ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਵਜੂਦ ਇਹ ਸਮਝਦੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਸਿਨੇਮਾ ਦਾ ਫਰਜ਼ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਜੋ ਹਕੀਕਤ ਹੈ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਤੱਕ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਏ, ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਹੀ ਅੱਗੇ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਏ ਨੇ। ਸੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਜੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਸਮਾਪਤੀ। ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਮੇਰਾ ਸਾਥ ਹੋਇਆ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ ਮੰਡੇ ਟੂ ਫਰਾਈਡੇ ਸ਼ਾਮ ਦੇ 6 ਵਜੇ ਪੈਸੀਫਿਕ ਸਟੈਂਡਰਡ ਟਾਈਮ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਾਬਿਕ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦਾ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਬਣਨਾ ਚਾਹੋ ਤਾਂ ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ 6046037555 ਔਰ ਯੂ ਕੈਨ ਈਮੇਲ ਮੀ ਐਟ harpreetsingh@gmail.com। ਇੱਥੇ ਲੈਣਾ ਆ ਗਿਆ, ਫਿਰ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਹੈਵ ਅ ਸੇਫ ਈਵਨਿੰਗ, ਸਟੇ ਹੈਲਦੀ ਐਂਡ ਇੰਜੋਏ ਯੋਰਸੈਲਫ।
ਕੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਰੀ, ਡੈਲਟਾ, ਰਿਚਮੰਡ, ਐਬਸਫੋਰਡ ਜਾਂ ਵੈਂਕੂਵਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਵਾਂ ਘਰ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਬਾਰੇ ਸੋਚ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਰੈਨੋਵੇਟ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ? ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਲੋੜ ਹੈ ਇੱਕ ਤਜਰਬੇਕਾਰ ਬਿਲਡਰ, ਇੱਕ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟਿਵ ਇੰਟੀਰੀਅਰ ਡਿਜ਼ਾਈਨਰ ਦੀ ਜੋ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਹੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਗਾਈਡ ਕਰ ਸਕਣ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸੁਪਨੇ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਉਸਾਰ ਸਕਣ। ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ ਹਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਜਾਂ ਸੰਦੀਪ 6048259295 ਉੱਤੇ।
ਪਾਪਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਕਿਉਂ ਉਦਾਸ ਹੋ?
बेटा, तेरे चाचा दी कोरोना वायरस करके डेथ हो गई है क्योंकि उसने मेरे कहने के बावजूद भी टीका नहीं लगवाया।
ਚਾਚਾ ਜੀ ਤਾਂ ਪੜ੍ਹੇ ਲਿਖੇ, ਸਿਹਤਮੰਦ ਅਤੇ ਰੋਜ਼ ਐਕਸਰਸਾਈਜ਼ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਨ, ਫਿਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਟੀਕਾ ਕਿਉਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਲਗਵਾਇਆ?
ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਡਰ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਟੀਕੇ ਦੇ ਮਾੜੇ ਪ੍ਰਭਾਵ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਨ ਅਤੇ ਇਹ ਸੁਰੱਖਿਅਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਹਾਲਾਂਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਮਝਾਇਆ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਸਭ ਅਫਵਾਹਾਂ ਹਨ ਅਤੇ ਇਹ ਟੀਕੇ ਵਿਗਿਆਨਿਕਾਂ ਅਤੇ ਡਾਕਟਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਮਿਹਨਤ ਅਤੇ ਖੋਜ ਦਾ ਨਤੀਜਾ ਹਨ।
ਪਾਪਾ, ਹੁਣ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਦੇ ਮੈਂਬਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਟੀਕਾ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਲਗਵਾ ਲੈਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸਿੱਖ ਹੈਲਥ ਫਾਊਂਡੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਅਪੀਲ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਵੈਕਸੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਕਰਵਾਓ ਅਤੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਨਾਲਦਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਟੀਕਾ ਲਗਵਾਉਣ ਦੀ ਪ੍ਰੇਰਣਾ ਕਰੋ। ਆਓ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਿੱਖ ਹੈਲਥ ਫਾਊਂਡੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਇਸ ਮੁਹਿੰਮ ਦਾ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਬਣੀਏ।
ਲੈਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਨਵੇਂ ਤੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਅਪਲਾਈਐਂਸਸ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਸਟੋਵ, ਅਵਨ, ਫ੍ਰਿਜ, ਵਾਸ਼ਰ ਡਰਾਇਰ, ਮਾਈਕ੍ਰੋਵੇਵ, ਫ੍ਰੀਜ਼ਰਸ ਜਾਂ ਡਿਸ਼ਵਾਸ਼ਰ, ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਪਹੁੰਚੋ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਮ ਅਪਲਾਈਐਂਸਸ ਤੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ 3 ਬ੍ਰਾਂਚਸ ਸਰੀ, ਐਬਟਸਫੋਰਡ ਤੇ ਚਿਲਵੈਕ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਨ। ਇੱਥੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਵਾਜਬ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਅਪਲਾਈਐਂਸਸ ਮਿਲਣਗੇ। ਇਹ ਡਿਲੀਵਰੀ ਤੇ ਇੰਸਟਾਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਵੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ। ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਪੈਕੇजेस ਫॉर ਬਿਲਡਰਸ ਐਂਡ ਹੋਮ ਓਨਰਸ। ਕਾਲ 6045904140 604 590 4140।